Hey everyone, this is Kei Sato Kaiba back with another chess video. So, for this video, I was recently asked, what is the one thing, if you have to pick one thing, what is the one thing that the average chess player could do to most benefit, to improve their chess overall? And I thought a bit, and my answer was learning how to learn, if that makes sense. And this is so often overlooked, I feel like, because, chess engines are such a powerful tool, but I think people sometimes misuse them or don't know how to fully utilize the engine to the best of their abilities. And I haven't really seen too much content on it, so I thought, why don't I give a few videos and I'll show how to best do this. So, what makes an engine so powerful is because, the ideal thing is to have a really strong player with you. It's really nice if you have a, slightly higher rated player, a friend, a chess coach, someone who can offer you advice. But that isn't always available. But what is available is pretty much always you have this internet access. That is something that Paul Morphy never had, Capablanca never had, all these great players in the past never had, but we do. And it is so valuable to be able to put any chess position into a computer and get almost instant feedback. Here we can put in anything, and within seconds, we can figure out and start to try and navigate the position. And the engine being so strong, it's such an amazing resource if you could translate this, from putting the position into the computer to, what it becomes the output being you having like one or two ideas that okay, here's the information, here's what I should do. So, what I thought of was, well, why not go over one chess game and then analyze it? And when I picked a game, I thought, well, this isn't actually too helpful for everyone because, maybe some people won't understand the ideas or other people it'll be review. And then I thought about it and I was like, I'm going to scrap that idea. That idea doesn't make sense to me because it's not appealing to everyone. And I want everyone to be included here. So then I refined that same idea and I thought, hey, that's it. I'll pick one intermediate level game, roughly 1500 level, and I'll analyze it in three different videos. I will do three videos on the exact same game, and in the first video, which is this one, I will try and have more of a beginner-minded target audience in mind. Not necessarily 100% new to chess, but someone who is beginning chess. Someone who's learning chess. Maybe someone who's been playing for a few years, but they wouldn't quite consider themselves intermediate. And I will show them here how I would approach a chess engine. You put this in the computer and see kind of how I would take this game and how to improve on it, what to take away from it. And then the second video, I'll plan to do the exact same thing, except more from an intermediate player. Someone who's been playing for a while and they have a few of the basic concepts in mind, but how to take this analysis to a slightly deeper level. And then finally, in the third video, I wanted to do something a bit more advanced, something more around the level of what I'm thinking now. And hopefully those ideas would kind of reveal maybe so how I would change this game if I were to play this, more current day. So all right, so let's get started with it. I don't want to take too long. I'm sure the analysis will be long enough. So for here, we'll get started. And again, this player here, you may recognize this username here. This is not a blitz game. This is not something like that. I wanted to find a 1500 level game, and I thought, why not find a game from when I was actually lower rated? And so this is a 20-minute game. If I go to the details here, yeah, 20-minute game. So this game was played in 2018, so a few years ago now. And so back then, my repertoire was a little different, but we'll see what we get here. So when you're a beginner and you put this in the computer, for the most part, if these are book moves, I would just kind of know your opening that you play relatively well. And if it's book, it's most of the time it's okay. As long as you have an idea what the book moves are. If I see this, I think it's probably an okay move. And we keep going. Now, especially when you're first starting out, I wouldn't worry about inaccuracies too much. I would look at them, but I would especially focus on blunders, which would be the red, and I would focus on mistakes, which would be the yellow. And then there's this kind of more brighter yellow. I guess the mistakes are more of an orange. And for inaccuracies, I would look at it and maybe find the best move, but I wouldn't stay too focused on it, because if you run this exact same move at a deeper engine depth in the future, this inaccuracy might actually change. Sometimes this inaccuracy will turn out to be an okay move, and other times it will turn out to be a mistake. So, because it can fluctuate slightly more often than mistakes and blunders, I would just look at it and kind of put it in the background for the time being. And then once you become a little more higher rated and have a little bit more understanding and practice with the computer, then you could start analyzing inaccuracies as well. But if you don't understand them, that's okay. Sometimes computers do weird stuff, and sometimes the computer isn't even always right when it comes to something like an inaccuracy. So let's see. So bishop g5, that's the first inaccuracy, and we will look at it, and we'll say, what could white have done? Well, it says c captures d5 was best. Okay, so I would kind of look at this visually and go, all right, this looks okay. If they play this against me in the future, c takes is the best move. It looks like quite a good difference amount. And this looks pretty symmetrical. It looks like the game is just kind of normal. And I think, okay, so maybe a small improvement is if they go bishop, instead of bishop g5, maybe my opponent would be better to play this. All right, and I just remember that, and okay, on to the next move. That's simple. We don't want to spend too much time on, this. Because it's an inaccuracy, it's not a huge thing, and especially it's us. In this game, we're playing black. So we want to see, more so our side. We want to look at if our opponent messes up, but, of course, the focus is on us. So we take a pawn. And back when I played this game, this was a book, it's all opening theory, even though it doesn't have a little book icon. And I knew this because this is the opening I played, for quite a few years, maybe 1 or 2 years at this point. Maybe 1 year, because this would be 2018. So this may be about 1 year of knowing this opening. And so I already knew if they would play bishop g5, I would take it. It looks like I'm winning a pawn. And so they play e4. And what my study told me was that I can hang on to this pawn b5. And basically, it looks like I'm winning material. Now, as a little side note, now that I've been playing for a lot more years, the current level me, I actually don't play this version of the Slav anymore. I actually go for the semi-Slav because I've realized neglecting your piece development sometimes is a bit too costly for a pawn. And yes, maybe you will keep this pawn if you play accurately. But I feel like maybe it's giving white a little too much freer play than what we really need to allow. But that's current me thinking. Back then, I was completely fine with this. This opening worked perfectly well for my repertoire. And that's one thing that a lot of players will do over the course of time, which is why I mentioned this here, is it's okay to change repertoire. It's okay to slowly adapt. It's okay to grow over time. You'll slowly incorporate new ideas into your game and your play style, and that's perfectly normal. So here, I played b5, which I knew, and so my opponent plays a4, which as we can see by the engine here, this is a mistake. And so again, mistakes and blunders are the moves we really want to focus on. So okay, here's the first critical, moment of the game. So all right, so why is a4 a mistake? Well, assuming we didn't know this, we could look at the engine here and we could see what's the best move. So knight f3 is best. And then we can brainstorm. Okay, why is knight f3 better? And if we have no idea, we can fall back on opening principles and we can think, all right, well, let's see, we're still in the opening. The three main things to do are control the center, control these three, okay, or these four squares, all right. And then what are the other opening principles? Castling early, all right. And then the other one, is develop pieces. So there's control the center, castle early, and develop pieces. Okay, so comparing knight f3 to a4, which one of these better controls the center? Well, a4 doesn't really control the center at all, whereas at least a knight on f3, it controls these two squares. Okay, so knight f3 is a little better than that. What else is there? Okay, well, castling. Well, we didn't castle with either of these, but a4 does nothing to help castling. Whereas knight f3, we're getting one piece out of the way, so we're one step closer to castling. All we have to do is develop this bishop and then castle, and we're off to the races. So it looks like knight f3 is slightly better to opening principles than a4 in that regard. And then the last thing, so is simply piece development. So a4 does nothing to develop a piece, doesn't facilitate developing a piece at all, but knight f3 actually gets a piece out. So all three of those actually point to knight f3 being better. So even if we don't understand the logic behind why knight f3 is best, we can just use opening principles and figure out, okay, this move is slightly better. But let's say we weren't in the opening, or maybe the opening principles wasn't so clear which one is better and why. So at this moment, I would go back and I would say, okay, knight f3 we know is the best because the engine just calculated this. But if we play a4, which the computer says is a mistake, what is the counter thing? What is wrong with this? What is the exploitation to a4? And sometimes that will kind of indirectly show you why another move is better, like say knight f3. So if we take a look at the engine here, we will see that b4 is by far better than these moves. This is over a pawn, over a pawn difference here. So it's a very big difference in valuation. And so b4 is a lot better. Okay, well, why is b4 better? Well, let's see. The line goes b4, knight b1, knight captures e4. And that's why it was a pawn difference. We were literally winning a pawn. We actually won another pawn here. And now we can kind of backtrack and we see, okay, so this is why a4 is actually a mistake. Because it allows our pawn move, b4, removes the defender of this knight, which was guarding their central pawn. And after this knight has to move somewhere, we actually just win a pawn. So that is the reason that a4 is a mistake. It actually blunders material. Indirectly, I think if most beginning players were to see this, they wouldn't think a4 blunders material. They would think hanging a piece is blundering material. Dropping your queen, that would be hanging material. But this is indirectly blundering too. And just having this one little small, move in our analysis, you do this over time, you do this for all of your games, you will learn a lot and you will improve a lot just by doing this over and over and over and seeing these small little things and then fixing them in the future because the more you see these ideas, the more likely you are to realize them in a game and prevent them, and exploit them from your opponent. So here I'll remember, okay, so if they ever go a4 in this exact position, I'll remember b4 is a good idea, and then I can calculate that in the game. So okay, so let's keep going. They played a4. In the game, my bishop b7 was a mistake because I thought, well, I should develop. I thought maybe I can get to the long diagonal. Maybe this bishop will help defend this rook because sometimes there's pins on the a file. That's more of a common tactic with this opening. But here, this fails to exploit the advantage because, of course, b4 was a direct exploitation to removing this knight and then winning another pawn. But of course, I did not see that because I was simply looking at my ideas back in the game. And I was too blindly focused on my own plans. I didn't think maybe there's a way to exploit the opponents. See, that's one of the problems where a lot of beginners, and even some intermediate players, they have a really good game or a good effort against high rated players, but then when they play against players who are on their own level, they actually struggle. And that's kind of paradoxical. It's like, why is that happening? You would think you would be worse against the better players because they're better. And in a sense, you are. But what usually happens in those cases is the better players are playing quote unquote book moves, or they're playing better moves more often, which is normally good. But the problem is when you play someone that's lower rated, they are still thinking people. They still have creative ideas. They still have a lot of thought behind their moves. It is just that how they're thinking, is flawed in some way, or they would be higher rated. But why is it flawed? In this case, A4 is flawed because it allows B4. But if you don't see this, you could actually let your opponent get away with something that they shouldn't. And so that's the problem, is that a lot of lower rated players, especially if they do really well against higher rated players but struggle around their own level, it's usually because they're letting their opponent get away with something when they should be capitalizing themselves. And that usually means not just blindly following your plans. Bishop b7 is a great move in this type of opening. It's a very thematic idea. I'm sure I was familiar with it back then because I've been playing the Slav defense about a year at this point. But at the same time, you shouldn't be moving blindly just because it's a common idea for the opening. You have to be looking at how can I exploit things. And here, b4 is just a really good move that's already given black a good advantage. But alas, I played bishop b7. If I was analyzing this back then, I would see this in the analysis and go, okay, this is a mistake. Engine says so. What's wrong with it? b4 is the best move. Okay, and then I would just remember that for next time, and I would keep on going with the rest of the analysis. So white plays f3. Another orange move. If it's orange or red, blunder, mistake or blunder, we should take a closer look at it. So why is f3 a mistake? Okay, well, obviously from opening principles, we know that it weakens the king, but this is a slightly more advanced idea. Not everyone would recognize that. But if you just look at the engine and say we knew nothing about why f3 is bad, we will simply compare. So let's see, f3 was a mistake. Engine says e5 is best. So let's play e5. So why is e5 best? Well, let's see. If you play e5, we're attacking this knight. My knight has to go somewhere. Say knight d5. That's the engine recommendation. And we just let it run and see, okay, so what happens? Bishop e2 was a move. Now it's saying e6, but bishop e2 are both good. And so something like this, and it looks like they're just trying to get developed, and maybe they'll play knight f3, maybe they'll castle. It looks like they'll just have a very solid position. And so I think the game continues. I think the game is still fairly close. It's just a normal game at that point. But what happens with f3? Of course, they were probably just taking a little extra precaution of holding this pawn, which is an understandable idea. But here, f3 is not so great. Well, why? Well, let's take a look at the engine. We have a6. Well, why is a6 good? So that is the move I actually played in the game. In the actual game, I did see a6, and this takes a little bit of knowledge for the opening. But again, everyone's opening repertoire is different, and if you've been playing an opening and you've been sticking with it, you'll probably learn the ideas of the opening, at least the very basic fundamental ideas. And with this particular opening, this is one of those common moves that if you've studied it, this is a very natural move. Otherwise, it's just a weird move. Like, why would you play a random pawn move? Why not develop and play opening principles, get castled, and those are good ideas as well. But here there's a very big threat, and so this threat is Black's whole plan of their idea is we took on c4 here. We played d capture c4 much earlier in the game, and we got greedy. We thought, hey, we can snag a pawn, and if we can keep a pawn, we'll just have a pawn lead. So what? White has nothing. But that's a bit over optimistic because we have a lot of pieces that are underdeveloped. These take a while to get in the game, especially in this, open usually or queen side suffers. And so my thinking back then when I was 1500, it was very ambitious, and I don't regret it. I feel like my playstyle is still very similar, is I thought, well, hey, let's try and grab the pawn, and then let's try and consolidate. Let's try and get fully developed, and if I can get both, I've just got a free pawn. And I thought I could convert and take this down to an endgame, and oftentimes I would win. But sometimes I would also get into really bad positions here because my opponent defended really well, and I wouldn't have time to develop, and then I would simply lose the game, and the material meant nothing. So it's a bit of a pros and cons dynamics or statics type thing, very, back and forth on balances. But, do I regret it? No, of course not. It's still very interesting chess, but I've learned a lot from it, and I've learned, sometimes there's some better ideas than just simply trying to grab material. But here, a6 is very consistent. It's trying to secure b5, and I'm just trying to keep my material lead. Now, why do I have to play a6? I have to do that because if I don't play that, say I play normal developing move, they can capture here, I can recapture, and then they have knight captures b5. And they win the pawn back. And it's actually worse than that, because now the c4 pawn will be weak, and maybe they'll even win that too. So I have to be very careful and overprotect b5. And so that's why in this exact opening, a6 is a very common move. And so I kind of want to describe more in general with some of these openings, not just this particular opening, but if whatever opening you play, if you play it enough, you'll start to see certain moves, certain patterns, certain common themes that come up. And in this particular opening, a6 is a very common pattern to overprotect this pawn. And just little ideas like that. They're in every opening. But if you play that opening enough, you'll learn these subtle little ideas. And just over time, you'll just get stronger and stronger by putting in those ideas into practice. So the game continued. A captures b4. Slightly inaccurate. Okay, f4 was a little better. That was the recommended move. Okay, f4 is best. And I would just kind of note that, okay, f4 is a little better. Probably makes us another square for the knight. That way, they can develop. Makes sense. And so we would recapture. Okay, we continue on with the game. d5, that was fine. Queen c7, again, inaccurate, so we won't look at it too deeply. Only look at it more deeply if it's a mistake or a blunder. And so here, this is okay. I was trying to get my queen side developed, and I was thinking maybe I could go here later. And so why is queen c7 not as good? Well, maybe it's a little better to develop the minor pieces first. Minor pieces are the knights and bishops, and then the heavy pieces are the queen and both rooks. And so maybe it makes more sense to bring out the minor pieces first because they're of lesser value, and maybe those are a little more flexible in where they go. The queen might not necessarily go on c7. So in this case, where can this knight really go? I mean, this knight can't go to a6. That's obviously my own pawn. Can't go to c6. That's a square that their pawn controls. If I really want to develop this knight, there's really only one square it can go to. So why wait? Why not just play it? And so queen c7 is an okay move, but maybe the queen will go to b6. Maybe it'll go to a5. In the future. Of course, right now, that's on the same square as the rook, so, we can't do that right away. But maybe the rook will move somewhere like c1. We never really know. This queen has many options it could go to. Maybe the queen can even go to c8. I'm not really sure. But the knight only has one option, so might as well develop that first. And if we were to look at the engine, if we had no idea why queen c7 wasn't as good, we would go back and see the best move and say, okay, the engine says knight b to d7 is best. All right, I would play knight b to d7, and I would see why. And let's see. So let it load, see what their best move is. Their best moves are b3 or bishop e3, and play a move you understand. If this is too, strange looking, you can play it. You can have fun with the engine, but play a developing move. If you think maybe this is good, maybe controlling some of this diagonal, you think, okay, that looks all right. Play that, and then figure, okay, well now what? Well, e6, that looks like a developing move. We're trying to get this bishop developed. Okay, and the game is probably just going to continue. White's going to play on. Black is going to get this bishop out. Black is going to castle. And black is still consistent with their one pawn lead. It looks like they're, for the time being, holding their pawn. And we could keep going as deep as we want until we feel comfortable. But as we can see, black is -2, -3.9, -3. A bunch of these are all complete negative here. And negative is an advantage for black. Positive is an advantage for white. So black is completely better here. Much more than just the one pawn lead. So we don't have to worry too much. We go, okay, knight b d7, slightly better than queen c7. It's not a big deal. And so we continue with the game. Queen d2 is a mistake. That is in orange, so we will look a little bit longer at this. And so b3 is best. And so we will say, why is b3 best? Queen is a developing move. It defends the bishop. That looks like a logical move. Why is b3 so much better? And this is another thematic move where if you play this particular opening enough, then you will see this common pattern come up a lot. Black has a really nice pawn chain here, and this pawn on b3 is not really the best pawn in the world. Here on b2, it's really got no support here. These pawns have been traded off, and so this is a weak pawn, and black's pawn chain is pretty imposing. And so just looking logically or running with the engine, seeing what the best moves are, you'll quickly figure out it actually makes sense to play b3. And let's say black was to somehow take it because they're greedy, then just queen recaptures, and they're in complete fine shape here. You know, black is still slightly better, but this looks a lot less menacing than the pawn chain that extended to c4. If we were to go back a few moves, this looks a lot more dangerous to me because now black's pawns look like they're about to advance, and maybe they might queen in the future. It's fairly scary looking. 3 pawns versus 1 majority. But if you exchange a little bit, and we go, let's see, yeah, back here to this position, this is, 2 versus none, yes, but at least there's pieces putting pressure on this. So at least there's some attempt to hold these pawns back. So I think that's kind of a superficial analysis you might get to into maybe why b3 was the better move to play. But if you'd studied this opening or played it for about even just a year like I had at this point, you would realize that b3 is a very common idea based on the fact that you would see this in a lot of games and you would kind of get practice knowing how to handle it. But okay, queen d2, they said it was a mistake. b3 was better. Not a huge deal, but it's a small detail. And so now we get to the first blunder of the game. This is bright red here, so we're definitely going to look at this just like we do with the orange mistake moves. And we figure, okay, this is a blunder, so e6 is best. And this is bad. Okay, so why is this bad? Well, it looks like the only move that gives white an advantage, the others are slightly better for black, is bishop f4. And we can quickly see that our queen is not looking so good here. It looks almost like it's going to get trapped. It's not quite. We can't go here because their queen will take it. But, we do have some squares available, but it's not so easy to look at here. Looks like queen h5, which I did play in the game, was the best move. But there's not really too many places that, black can go here. So if we look at, some other moves, what is there really? You either move the queen, or maybe you play some sacrifice and then create a square. One idea here is sacrifice a knight, knight captures e4. I'll just play it, but this is one idea that engine is suggesting. Because queen h5 we see much preferred best move, but the second move is knight captures e4. And if we follow that line, we're simply moving the queen to the square that the knight was. And we can give back some material, and white is better, but it's just better to just save the queen if you see it. And there is one square, queen h5. So we didn't really want to allow this. So if we go back to this blunder, this was easily avoidable. What was the very best move? And so if we see that was a blunder, best was e6. And black is a lot better here, -3.11. Okay, So let's go back and play e6. And so if we play e6, then what are we doing here? Well, it looks like we're going to get developed. We're just simply opening principles. We're maybe getting this bishop out, maybe either here, maybe even e7. Not entirely sure, but it looks like we'll get the bishop out, and then we'll just castle kingside. Maybe this knight will go to d7. It looks like just a normal game. And so I probably should have been thinking piece development here. Instead of moving the queen again, it is still the opening. Generally, you don't want to be moving the same piece twice. So with that being said, just basic opening principles, I should think, all right, e6, I'll try and remember opening principles slightly more often. I don't want to forget about my piece development. And then, okay, so now we've made an improvement. One of the keys with putting these into the engine isn't so much the exact position, because the chance I'm going to get this exact identical position in a future game is very unlikely unless they're all book moves. But what is likely is I'll make that mental note and go, okay, this is not so great because I moved the same piece again out of the opening, and I'm not developing a piece. If I go e6, I'm trying to get this bishop developed somewhere. Okay, so I'll try and remember, develop my pieces, don't neglect development, try and follow opening principles. And if I do this over and over and over with every single game that I play, if I analyze all of them, you'll start to notice patterns in what you do wrong with these blunders. You'll notice whenever I play a mistake or a blunder, it's usually for this reason. It's usually for that reason. And you'll notice the reasons that are more likely to happen if you just consciously remember, okay, this was a mistake last time. I'll try and be a little careful with it next time. You'll notice you'll make less and less mistakes over time. So in the game I did play queen h5. We are still hanging on here despite the blunder. And so white develops. Good. This is the best move. We'll keep going. Inaccurate. And again, inaccuracy we won't look at as deeply, but we will note the best move. So it looks like best was e5. So here I will look at e5 was best. Okay, so we'll kind of look at the position and say, okay, well, this looks all right. Maybe we're going to get this bishop developed. We're contesting the center. It looks solid. And that's all we need to really look at. We just think, okay, slightly better move was e5. Opening principles, getting developed, makes sense. Here I thought my queen would probably get trapped. This is probably why I moved it again. But realistically, there was no need to really move this queen right away. It was fine on h5. It's still fine on g6. It more or less wasted a move. So that's why it's a little inaccurate. So they go knight g3. Okay. So this looks like a normal move, but the computer says it's a mistake. I say it's normal because it looks like they're just, trying to help development. They're clearing a square by moving the knight out of e2, and then they're probably going to go bishop e2 and castle kingside. Looks like good opening principles. So then why is this a mistake? And we'll see, well, the recommended move is knight captures b5. It looks like a sacrifice, doesn't it? We should take a look at it. And so if you have never seen this before, you would say, well, let's play it. Knight captures b5. What's the problem? And so we would take the knight, and then we would quickly realize, this is the problem. They trade rooks, but now this knight hangs. And so black would have actually dropped material there. It just flat out loses. So that was a whole tactical sequence that you might not have seen back at this moment. But if you had, you would see, okay, white is actually really good here. It looks like my rook is developed, or it's not developed. It looks like my rook is protected, because of this pin. I can just recapture the rook. That's fine. And that's true. But the problem is once that rook is captured, this knight now no longer has a defender since this rook is now traded off. And so we could look at that and go, all right, so there was a little tactic there. Have to remember that for next time. We'll have to be a little more careful with those tactics and a little more careful for looking at the opponent's ideas. Okay, and then we just keep on going with the rest of the game. So that was a mistake. Knight b5 is a little stronger. Knight captures b5. Okay, so we continue the game. Knight f to d7. Computer says it's okay. We'll keep going. Bishop b2, inaccurate. Again, it looks like it was good to develop and get castled. Computer says rook to d1 was slightly better. Okay, and so we'll just remember, okay, so maybe in this position rook is better. Maybe putting in the same file as the queen. Maybe there's some pressure because this d pawn might become a pass pawn. All right, so it makes sense. Put your rooks behind pass pawns. That's a common rule that's known as the Tarrasch rule. I don't know if I'd call it opening principles, but I'll say it's a common, more or less middle game motif. It's a common principle that happens, and common enough that it has its own name. So if you had studied those fundamentals, you would know, okay, rooks behind pass pawns or behind pawns that could be passed makes sense. It looks good. Maybe rook d1 slightly better. But this is also okay. It's only inaccurate. It's not a mistake or a blunder. So we'll keep going with the game. So knight c5, not as good as e5. We saw this earlier. It recommended e5 as well. It looks like we're just contesting the center and then trying to get this bishop into the game. But instead, we did not do that. So we'll try and remember that. Again, we're noticing patterns already. e5 again, can't neglect development. Our king is still in the center. So all right, so we can't go back in time. Knight c5 is what we played. e5 was a little bit better. And so we'll keep going. So white castles, and this is a blunder. This is red. Castling is normally a very good move. So there must be a very serious reason why a very normal developing move doesn't work. And we'll see what was played in the game and the computer recommended move here. By far, knight b3. And we'll see, oh, of course. So we fork material. And so, of course, castling wasn't good because, it missed the opponent's chance for a counterplay. It missed the fact that the opponent, in this case black, had a tactic. And so what was better than castling? Well, okay, let's see. So what could white have played here? We'll let the engine run for a bit. And we'll see knight captures b5. This tactic still works for the same idea that we looked at before, where they can trade here. This rook that was now defending the knight on b8 is now lost since they've traded it off. And so b8 has lost a defender. White will just pick up a piece. And now they're completely fine. This capture on b5 is a winning tactic. It does work. But okay, but let's go back and say maybe they didn't see that tactic. What else was also good? And it looks like the second best move was rook d1, which we also looked at. So it looks like the same ideas are still applying on this move. And notice also with rook d1, if we play knight b3 now, there's no fork. So all they can do is, since there's nothing on a1 that needed to move, they can just move the queen from from d2. Looks like queen e3, and they're completely fine. Both sides are fine. This is still, opening going into the middle game. Still nothing wrong here. And it looks like both sides are about equal. Black is still up the pawn, so black is still happy, practically speaking. So we can see by the engine, it looks like white has compensation for that pawn, and they're actually slightly winning. But, during the game, I'm sure black thought they were much better here because they're up the pawn. But okay, this is a small little deviation from the actual game, because right here it was knight c5. They castled, we played the fork. Okay, so now here they have to move. Obviously, they're going to save their queen because it's worth more material than the rook on a1. So they move the queen somewhere. And it looks like queen e3 was chosen, but this is also a blunder. Okay, so why is this a blunder? Orange, which are mistakes, and blunders, which are in red. Both of those we need to look at fairly seriously. So okay, so obviously they just had to move the queen somewhere, and then we could recapture the rook. You wouldn't think it would matter too much where the queen would move. But it looks like rook to, c2, rook to d1. We'll go rook d1 because that's what the engine said was best earlier. And so we'll see, okay, so why not play this? This is the best move for black, or sorry, the best move for white. And it looks like they just recapture, and seems like the game continues. So why is queen to e3 worse than queen to d1? And so let's play queen e3 and see, well, why can't we take this? And now, if you look at the engine, we'll see knight captures a1 is a decent move. It is alright, black is better. But it looks like with the queen on e3, this new move we have not seen, a5, has jumped incredibly high in its value. Before it was like -2 when we saw e5 earlier in the game, whereas now it's over -6. So black is much, much, much better in this version. With the queen on e3, e5 becomes much more powerful. And so we must ask ourselves, well, why is this the case? And so if we're still confused, play the actual move, play e5, and see what the engine says. So it looks like this bishop really has nowhere to go. Where can this bishop go? Well, white could play en passant. Looks like that's the best move, play en passant capture. And now we see the problem. We see that there's bishop to c5. Instead of winning the rook, the location of the queen, in combination with their king, has now walked into this very nasty tactic here. This queen has nowhere to, it can't step out of the pin because the king. And so white will simply lose their queen. And so if we backtrack, we go, okay, e5 was good. Why was e5 so great? And we see it created the threat of bishop to c5. That's why queen e3 was such a bad move. The location of the queen was simply misplacing it, and that's why this move was a blunder. Now, why is e5 better than e6? And then we'll see, oh, of course, because we're threatening the bishop. So if they were to move the queen somewhere, protect their queen, let's say they had a other square available. In this case, I don't think the queen has any good retreats. Maybe queen f2 is fine. That way, if we go bishop c5, maybe they can drop back their bishop. Maybe that looks a little more testing. But in this case here, because our pawn is on e5 and not e6, we can just win the bishop. And so that makes e5 stronger than e6. And now we see, okay, so now we know why e5 was so good. It's trying to attack their bishop, it's threatening to develop, and we're threatening to play this very nasty pin that'll win the queen. So, alright, so that's why the queen's location e3 is not good. So, of course, we already saw the best move was queen d1, and then we just capture here, and we just get back the exchange that we were down. Alright, so that is why queen d1 was a little better. And now the mental note we make is we have to be a little careful about moves like this because, okay, our diagonal was weak. We don't want to put the queen and king on the same diagonal. We might also see that f3 made our king a little weaker. All right, so we just kind of make mental notes of that and we just continue the game. Okay, so that was a blunder. We continue with the game. Knight captures a1 was a mistake. And normally we would spend a lot of time looking at this. Why is winning material a mistake? But we just saw this line. There's e5. That was a lot stronger. Because here, if we go back, we're winning the rook, but we're giving up the knight. So we're really just taking 2 points of material from the opponent. Whereas if we were to play e5, very strong idea, then we would actually be winning the queen in exchange for the bishop. And of course, that's a greater material advantage. So of course, we're going to want to take the more material. I mean, we're the same player who just went for a pawn on c4. We're definitely going to want to win material when we can. But okay, knight captures a1 was played. Rook captures a1, fine, get back the material, looks normal. And so now we played e6. We finally want to get developed. We want to get this bishop out. We want to get castled. Let's continue with the game. And so this is a blunder. Okay, well, why is it a blunder? It looks like knight d7 was a normal developing move, but it is the only move that is still winning. That's kind of rather strange. Developing move, but it's the only one that's winning. So what's wrong with e6? It looks like it was developing. We're going to get our king, get the pieces out, get the king castle. Looks good. So let's run with the line. Let's see what's the problem. So it looks like queen b6 is the best move. Knight captures b5 tactic, which we saw before, is still working. So if you remember, that one was we take here, here, exchange, and again, this knight was hanging. So okay, so that tactic still exists, but both of us were constantly missing that. It's a pretty hard tactic to see that it looks like that pawn is very well defended. But okay, but queen b6 was the best move, and that is what the opponent played. And so here, this is a very common instructional moment, and this is why analyzing with an engine sometimes beginners get a little frustrated with it. And even intermediate players who have used an engine for a while sometimes, I don't want to say discredit, but maybe undervalue how important a computer is because they see this moment, and this is instructional. We just saw queen b6 was the best move. Now it's saying an inaccuracy. Why? So again, this is something where a little more experience comes in. We can see knight, queen b6, we go back and forth, queen b6 best move. We play it, now it says inaccurate. It said this was the second best, what gives? And so this is what I mentioned earlier, where this is an inaccuracy. Mistakes and blunders are much more severe, the orange and red, and that's why we want to analyze them a lot more seriously, especially as a beginning player. We want to focus on those. We can look at inaccuracies, but we don't want to get too focused on them. I think too many beginners, they only look at the best move, they only look at the top engine move, and they just try and memorize them all. And that is a huge mistake. The value in computers is not trying to memorize the best moves and play the moves that are just a few semi-pawns best. That's just complete silliness. Chess is too deep, and as the engine runs deeper, if the engine runs longer and starts thinking on the move, it'll sometimes change its evaluation slightly. And so this is the perfect example here, where queen b6 was analyzed by the computer. We can see it here, as the best move. Now, if we look at the depth here, we're currently at depth 19. I think it was at 20. Yeah, it jumped up to 20 now. And so at 20 depth, which means 20 ply deep, which is 10 moves, one side moving, like say black moves, white moves, that's one move. One ply is only one color move, so like this would be one ply That would be one part, like white moving. So depth of 20 is here, at least 10 moves deep. So at 10 moves deep, it's saying queen b6 is the best move. It's played, and now look at the depth. It's down to 8, 17, 18, 19. It's going to take a little bit to go to 20. It's at 20 now. It's still thinking that knight captures b5 was best. If we were to play knight captures b5, now it says a captures best, and we go to this line. It seems like the engine's changing its mind. And if we count semi-pawns, we'll see that they weren't too big of a difference. An evaluation was very similar. And that's the problem you run into with inaccuracies. Inaccuracy is only a very slight difference. Like I said, this is why you focus on mistakes and blunders when you're a beginning player, because it's more about the ideas, not so much counting the exact evaluation. Unfortunately, the computer cannot think like a human can, and it might be great that the computer can calculate so far deep. This is like Nakamura type depth. This is really far, crazy deep. You know, but unfortunately, humans can't think this deeply. We usually can't keep up with that kind of depth. Luckily for humans, we understand basics. We understand opening principles. We understand fundamentals. You can tell a human, let's develop our pieces, and they'll understand that, but a computer can't. And so this is the computer's attempt to try and figure out the position. And for lack of a better term, the computer is slightly confused when it goes queen b6, knight captures b5. It's not really sure which of these moves is better. Now, as you run at a deeper depth and you let the engine run longer, so if we were to have a more advanced computer and we were to run a lot deeper than 20 moves, say we went, depth 30, depth 40, depth 50, then these fluctuations will happen less and less, and the computer will start to figure out, okay, queen b6 is in fact the best move in this position, and it would kind of stick with that for the time being. So if you were to run this exact position a different day, a different depth, some other way where the computer sees something slightly differently, it'll reevaluate this position ever so slightly different. And so this is a good example of that, where we saw queen b6 look like an inaccuracy. It's really not. The little notation there is still showing for it. But for all intents and purposes, it's still the best move. And so we'll just kind of ignore it for the time being. Both this move and the knight move are very similar. White would be winning in both cases. We can see white is a lot better here. So that's my slight mini rant, not too bad, I hope, on why what I hope it becomes instructional is that sometimes the engine will say one move is best, like say queen b6 here, and then after it's played, we'll see it's actually not. And so that's kind of the short reason why. It happens to do with depth and some more complex computer type, the way the computers think. But back to the game here, without analyzing too deeply for inaccuracies. Queen b6 is the better move, and why? Well, our last move, e6, was a blunder, and before then, our queen defended b6, so their queen could not come to the square. Now, we had good intentions. We were trying to get developed. We were trying to get this bishop out and get castled, so we played the pawn to e6. But in doing so, we've had an interference tactic. We've literally interfered with ourselves. Usually interference tactic is white interferes with black, or black interferes with white. Here, we've interfered with ourselves. So we kind of walked into this, and that's why this is a blunder. Because now this is a very strong move. Well, why is it so strong? We see the problem. This bishop is now under attack. And so I moved the bishop. That's fine. But we can see this is a mistake. Again, why? The whole position is collapsing. And we'll see the best move, knight captures b5. Even stronger than it was before, because now, when this pawn recaptures, this rook simply drops off the board. There is nothing, the whole position's collapsing, white is infiltrating. At least before, we had the bishop on b7 able to recapture this rook. This is no longer the case. Black is just completely losing now. And so it's a shame that it went this quickly downhill, but we can also look, what's the second best move? Knight captures is very strong. The second best is bishop captures b8. Very strong. And unfortunately, our opponent also played this. It just wins a piece. I can't recapture with the rook here because then the queen will take my rook. So both of these moves were immensely strong for white. Now, my opponent did play bishop captures here, which, as you may have noticed, the computer says is a mistake. And it's still winning, completely winning. It's just that this move was so much stronger, because here we're winning a piece. We're winning 3 points of material. I can't recapture because then I lose the rook as well. So, okay, bishop takes, white wins 3 points of material. But what happens if knight takes? If knight takes, which is the best move according to the engine, they only win 1 pawn. But what is the problem? Black cannot recapture without losing an entire rook, and that's worth more than 3. So okay, so what about 1 pawn? What's the problem? Why is 1 pawn so important? And it has to do with piece activity. Here, Black's king is still out in the open. It is still underdeveloped. It's still uncastled. It should have got castled a long time ago, but instead Black was too busy trying to hang on to material. And so the problem is, look at all these pieces that White is attacking with. This king is out in the open. 3 pieces attacking, maybe able to bring in more. Checkmate might very well come up soon. And so Black has to be very, very careful here. And we notice the top engine move. If we look at here, follow the line. E captures d5 is best. Knight c7 check. Let's play it. We'll see what's the problem. We're actually losing more material. We lost a pawn. Now we're getting forked. We're going to lose the rook. And so we can see this is even stronger than if we go back. Simply winning 1 piece here, winning 3 points is great, but winning a pawn and then playing a fork to win the rook, that's 6 points, and that's worth more. And so that's the reason that knight captures b5 was best, and this move is considered a mistake, even though it's still winning. That's another thing with computers is you have to understand, when they judge a move as a mistake or a blunder could still be winning. A mistake could still be winning. This is a winning move. Bishop captures b8. It wins material. White's position is a lot better. We can see this is all plus evaluation, which means White is in the lead. And so White can still be better. It just means that they lost a lot of their advantage, or they could have gotten a bigger advantage. And if the advantage is really big, then it would be a blunder. And if it's only kind of big, it'd be a mistake. And if it's really kind of small, but it is some advantage, it'd be called inaccuracy. So this was quote-unquote mistake, but it is still a winning move. Black is in trouble here. So Black tries desperately to get developed. We tried bishop to b4 with the hope that maybe we can develop and get our king castled out of the center. Try and save ourselves here. Now, the engine's best try was e captures d5, and the reason why is now that the queens are opposing, now they probably have to trade queens and maybe White will get rid of one of their best attackers because this king is so exposed. Maybe it was best to try and get the queens off. Black would still be losing, but maybe they're trying to hang on. Whereas in this line, bishop b4, a lot more human looking, I think. They're just trying to get developed, trying to get their king desperately castled. But now we see the problem, and why e captures d5 is best. The best move by far by the engine, not even close. Queen c6 check. And now, of course, we see our king is in the open, and our rook is unfortunately forked here. Not very good. If this pawn was here, again, this would not be possible because the queen would be looking at that square. So that is a problem for us. Unfortunately, White has played a very nice tactic against Black, and so Black has to defend here. And of course, they're going to lose the rook. Still best moves. White is playing very strong at this point. So Black finally castles. They're only down by 5 material-wise. Position-wise, it's really bad because White has been infiltrating. But, if White isn't too careful, maybe Black can catch up. 5 points, especially, against players who are not as, accurate as some of the other players. If they played as many mistakes and blunders as we have this game. 5 points is bad, but, it's maybe not impossible to come back. And so White still has to be a little careful. They have to be, keep their foot on the gas pedal and keep making threats. And that's exactly what they do. They go queen b7, another good move. They're attacking another black piece. Where does this bishop go? It's not got too many squares. This pawn is controlling a lot of things. This light square bishop isn't looking so good. It can really only go back to these squares and be defended by the rook on f8. It's about the only thing I see. And so bishop c8 was what I played. Queen went to b6. It looks like a fine move. Bishop d7. And now they try and trade this bishop. They're up by 5, so it makes good sense to try and trade pieces because White is up by a lot of material. So if they can trade down, they're just that much closer to an endgame where they're with a lot more material. So Black tries to get developed. They bring their last piece into the game. Rook from f8 to c8. They take my bishop. Not ideal, but of course if I traded here, if I go back a bit, if I were to have traded here, I thought, this is a trade, and then this bishop might fall anyway. I mean, where can this go? Maybe it can come back here, but it still looks pretty bad. So, unfortunately, we've lost more material this way, but, had it go with what we had. So, queen to g5, queen d6, also attacking the bishop again. E captures d5. No mistakes or blunders yet, so nothing that we haven't analyzed. Bishop to e6. And unfortunately, knight e7. And black resigned here because now they're getting forked again, losing even more material. And I really can't take this knight because then, of course, I lose it to their queen recapture. And being down by 8 already, and then about to lose a rook, so this is the moment where I resigned as black. And unfortunately lost this game. But by analyzing, especially your losses, you're going to find a lot more mistakes and blunders, and at least moments where one side most certainly made an error. And in this case, as with most games, there will be many mistakes and blunders, and a lot of times. And, this is, I was 1500s back then, so it's not like a, very, very beginning player. And look how many blunders and mistakes there were, so you could still be playing chess for years. You could be very experienced in chess, and have a pretty decent knowledge of the game and still make a lot of blunders and, mistakes. And so this is why analysis is very useful. Because if you were to just play a game and then rush on to the next game without analyzing, you're missing all of these learning opportunities to improve. And this is why learning how to learn is such a useful skill. Because, back then they didn't have chess computers like this. I couldn't just put this position into a computer and instantly get feedback, and know I can go into the next game and adapt and go, okay, here's what I'll do for next time. And so here I took a mental note of all these things. And if I really wanted, I could just kind of review the game again. I could go real briefly, real quickly. We remember some of these things. Oh yeah, that's right. We played this b4. And okay, so b4 was a common pattern. I want to remember that. Because b4 here moves the defender. This knight has to move. And then we'll just win another pawn. All right, very good idea. And so we keep going with the game. And we go, okay, well, I remember that b3 move for white. That's a common idea for white. May or may not remember that, but, because it's for the opponent. But it's still good to know that, the opponent could play it. Here's a very major blunder in the game. Queen e5. I moved the same piece twice. And I should have just tried to get developed. e6, get my bishop out, get castled. I shouldn't have neglected development, especially now. I've already won a pawn. That was the whole point of black's opening. They were trying to win a pawn in a very greedy fashion, but they got away with it. And in this case, black has succeeded. They are up a pawn. This pawn is very well defended. What can white do about it? Really nothing. So black has to be very careful to get developed, get castled. Don't let a chance to have their open king, ruin their chances where the material might not matter. So queen e5 was a blunder for that. So we will remember, okay, gotta remember, opening principles, get developed, get castled, sounds good. The game continued. Again, e5 was another chance to get our bishop out in the game. Black could have castled kingside. That would have been a lot better. We keep going. Luckily, we found this resource when the opponent didn't see our counterplay. And queen e3, there was that pin that we could have done, where here e5 and bishop to c5 was a very strong idea. So if we can remember, sometimes when the queen and king is on the same diagonal, same concept with rooks on the same file, sometimes there'll be a pin. And so, okay, small idea, we'll try and keep that in mind. We take here. Unfortunately, e6 had a very good positional idea. We're finally trying to get developed, but it was just a little bit too slow here. And notice that the best move, knight d7, also defends this square. If the knight was on d7, we're also defending the square, stopping the queen from getting in. And if that was true, the square was defended, then we could play e6 later. So that's why knight d7 was the best move. That's why it was the only winning move. Keeps the queen out of b6. But okay, we'll try and remember. Try and get developed earlier, because if we were to get this bishop out earlier and castle earlier, we wouldn't have to deal with all these problems. So we keep going. Unfortunately, this is where the game went downhill because we neglected our development, white infiltrated. There was a few tactics both sides missed. There was this fort, lost a lot of material, and then there was no mistakes or blunders for the rest of the game. And so we realized, okay, so this is more or less analysis complete. We'll remember those little details for next time. And then you do that for every single game especially the ones you lose. And as frustrating as it is to look at losses, you can turn them into really good teaching moments and help teach yourself. Learning how to learn is such a useful skill. And not always is that really one that's talked about, or at least it's not taught from that framework. People don't always think, how can I learn how to learn? Because teaching yourself is such a useful way, especially with a chess computer that is as strong as this. It might not be perfect at a lower depth like 20. We saw the inaccuracy thing back earlier in the game, where that inaccuracy turned on itself. I think it was here, or maybe it was another part on it. It could have been another knight captures move. But it was where that queen d6, queen d6 wasn't really. Let me see if I can find that move again. Or queen b6 here. Let's see, where was that? Okay, yeah, here. Where queen b6, said it was the best move, and then later it says knight captures b5 is the best move. So here it's bouncing back and forth between the two. It can't make up its mind. And eventually it'll settle on one, but queen b6 is the one that looks like it was best. We play queen b6 and says inaccurate. So the engine isn't perfect at this lower depth, but it is still immensely valuable to be able to take just a human perspective and go, here's one thing I can improve on, or a few points I can improve on. And I lost a game, but here's a few things I can work on. And maybe if I remember that, next time I'm less likely to lose in the same way. And you just do this over and over and over. You play a lot of games, you analyze a lot of games, you lose a lot of games. And as frustrating as it is, you get better by it. I think it was Anatoly Karpov, a long time ago, back in his prime. He was asked in an interview, how do you get so good at chess? And, his response, he kind of made a little humor out of it. He said, I found the toughest chess club I could, and I lost to players a lot. Which is kind of funny, but it's true. You lose a lot. But then what he didn't, say, in his joking way, is you analyze them. I can guarantee a player as strong as him analyzed his games, and that's why he improved. He played very tough competition, and he learned from his mistakes. And that is really what it takes to constantly work on your game and improve by yourself. So I hope this video helped everyone. Like I said, this will be the first part of 3, and for the others, I will analyze this exact same game, but I will go a little more in depth in certain moments where I feel this is a very maybe not complete beginner, but an earlier player mindset where we're looking at blunders and mistakes especially. And later on, we'll look a little bit more seriously at subtleties like inaccuracies. And finally, in the advanced video, we will look at even a few nuances even deeper than that. So stay tuned for those videos, and I hope everyone found this useful. I will see you in the next one.